The Buddha left home at the age of 29, and after 6 years of searching, he finally attained enlightenment. The first discourse delivered by the Buddha after his enlightenment is called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which translates as the Discourse on the Turning of the Wheel of Dhamma. It was delivered in the Deer Park near the city of Varanasi in Sarnath, India. This discourse is considered foundational in Buddhism because in it, the Buddha expounded the core principles of his teachings, which became the basis for all Buddhist traditions. It was addressed to the first 5 disciples of the Buddha, who had previously practiced asceticism with him, but abandoned him when he adopted the middle path between the extremes of self-mortification and indulgence in sensual pleasures. After this discourse, one of the 5 disciples, Kondana, became the first to fully understand the teachings and attained the state of an arahant. Thus, the Buddhist movement began. Let us listen to this sutta, which forms the foundation of the Buddhist teachings. Our channel is new and needs your support. In our channel, you can find many videos on the history and philosophical teachings of Buddhism. Please subscribe to our channel to support the teachings of Buddha on YouTube. You can download our app from Google Play, get notifications daily from Google, quotes from Buddha, guided meditation methods, articles about Buddhist wisdom and sutras from Pali Canon, discover inner peace, cultivate mindfulness, and unlock the infinite wisdom of the Buddha with this app. Download link below. Thus have I heard. Once, the Blessed One was staying at Varanasi, in the Deer Park at Isipatana. There, he addressed the 5 monks. Monks, one who has gone forth into the homeless life should not follow these 2 extremes. What 2? The pursuit of sensual pleasure in sensual objects, low, vulgar, worldly, ignoble, and unbeneficial. The pursuit of self-mortification, painful, ignoble, and unbeneficial. Avoiding both these extremes, the Tathagata has awakened to the middle path, which gives rise to vision and knowledge and leads to peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. And what monks is the middle path awakened to by the Tathagata, which leads to nibbana? It is this noble eightfold path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, or right concentration. This, monks, is the very middle path awakened to by the Tathagata, which leads to nibbana, the first noble truth. And this, monks, is the noble truth of suffering. Earth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Illness is suffering. Death is suffering. Union with what is displeasing is suffering. Separation from what is pleasing is suffering. Not getting what one wants is suffering. In short, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. The second noble truth. And this, monks, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. It is craving, which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for non-existence. The third noble truth. And this, monks, is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. The fourth noble truth. And this, monks, is the noble truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. It is this very noble eightfold path. As long as monks' mind, knowledge, and vision of these 4 noble truths in their 3 phases and 12 aspects were not yet thoroughly purified, I did not claim to have awakened to unsurpassed perfect enlightenment in this world with its devas, maras, brahmas, its ascetics, and brahmins. But when my knowledge and vision of these four noble truths in their 3 phases and 12 aspects were thoroughly purified, then I declared that I had awakened to unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. Knowledge and vision arose in me. Unshakable is my mind's liberation. This is my final birth. There is no more becoming. Thus spoke the Blessed One. Delighted, the 5 monks rejoiced at the Blessed One's words. And during this discourse, the stainless, undefiled vision of the Dhamma arose in the Venerable Khandana. Whatever is subject to arising is also subject to cessation. The exclamation of the Devas. And when the wheel of Dhamma was set in motion by the Blessed One, the earth-dwelling Devas exclaimed, "In Varanasi, in the deer park at Isipatana, the Blessed One has set in motion the unsurpassed wheel of Dhamma, which cannot be stopped by any ascetic, priest, deva, mara, brahma, or anyone else in this world." Hearing the exclamation of the earth-dwelling Devas, the Devas of the realm of the 4 great kings exclaimed, "In Varanasi, the Blessed One has set in motion the unsurpassed wheel of Dhamma." Hearing this, the Devas of Tava Timsa, the Devas of Yama, the Devas of Tushita, the Devas of Nimimanarati, the Devas of Paranimitava Savati, and the Devas of the retinue of Brahma all exclaim, "In Varanasi, in the deer park at Isipatana, the Blessed One has set in motion the unsurpassed wheel of Dhamma, which cannot be stopped by any ascetic, priest, deva, mara, brahma, or anyone else in this world." At that moment, the sound reached the Brahma world, and this system of 10,000 worlds trembled, quaked, and shook. An immeasurable radiant light appeared in the world, surpassing even the divine splendor of the Devas. Then the Blessed One inspiredly declared, "Khandiyana has indeed understood. Khandiyana has indeed understood." The cat clearly stated, and thus the Venerable Khandana came to be known as Anakhandana, Khandana who has understood. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel so as not to miss new sutras and interesting facts about Buddhism. A time will come, sooner or later, when after a long period, this world will disappear. And when that happens, beings are mostly reborn in the world of radiance. There they dwell bodiless, feeding on bliss, shining with their own light, moving through the air, remaining in radiance. And they stay in this state for a very long time. Then, sooner or later, after a very long time, a moment arrives when this world begins to develop again. When this happens, beings who have completed their existence in the world of radiance are mostly reborn as humans. They remain bodiless, feed on bliss, shine with their own light, move through the air, and continue to exist in radiance. And they remain like this for a very long time. At that time, the entire world consisted of a single mass of water, enveloped in darkness, a blinding darkness. Neither the moon nor the sun, nor stars nor constellations had yet appeared. Day and night, months and half-months, years and seasons were indistinguishable. There were no men or women, beings were simply considered beings. And sooner or later, after a very long time, a delectable earth appeared above the waters where these beings lived. The earth emerged like the foam that forms on the surface of rice cooked in milk as it cools. It had color, fragrance, and taste. Its color was like that of splendid clarified butter, and it was very sweet like flawless wild honey. Then one greedy being said, "Listen, what is this?" and took some of the delicious earth on its finger and tasted it. Thus, the being experienced the taste of the earth and was overcome with a passionate desire to eat it. Then, following its example, other beings also began tasting the earth, taking it on their fingers. They too liked its taste and were overcome with a passionate desire to eat it. Then these beings, separating pieces of the earth with their hands, began to enjoy its taste. As a result, their luminosity disappeared, and because their own light vanished, the sun and moon appeared, followed by stars and constellations. Then night and day, months and half-months, years and seasons became distinguishable. To such an extent, the world expanded once more. And these beings continued to enjoy the pleasant-tasting earth for a long time, feeding on it. And as they fed, they developed physical bodies. Some were beautiful, while others were ugly. The beautiful ones began to despise the unattractive ones, thinking, "We are more beautiful than they are." And because they became vain and proud of their appearance, the delicious earth disappeared. They gathered together and lamented, "Oh, that taste! Oh, that taste." And so even in our time, when people say, "Oh, that taste," upon finding something delightful, they echo the ancient words without even realizing it. Then, when the delicious earth disappeared, mushrooms began to grow. They had color, fragrance, and taste. Their color was like that of high-quality clarified butter, and they were very sweet, like the purest wild honey. The beings began to eat these mushrooms and enjoyed them for a very long time. As they continued to feed in this way, their bodies became coarser, and the differences in their appearance became even more pronounced. Some became more beautiful, while others uglier. The beautiful ones despised the unattractive ones, thinking, "We are more beautiful than they are. They are not as beautiful as we are." And as they became vain and proud of their appearance, the sweet mushrooms disappeared. Next, creeping plants appeared, growing rapidly like bamboo. They too had color, fragrance, and taste. Their color was like that of high-quality clarified butter, and they were very sweet, like the purest wild honey. The beings began to eat these creeping plants and enjoyed them for a very long time. As they continued to feed in this way, their bodies grew even coarser, and the differences in their appearance became even more pronounced. As before, the beautiful ones despised the unattractive ones, and when they, proud of their beauty, became even more vain, the creeping plants also disappeared. Then they gathered together, lamenting and weeping. "What wonderful plants we had! Alas, now they are gone. What have we lost?" Even today, when one person asks another why they are upset, and the other replies, "Oh, alas, what have we lost?" they echo these ancient words without realizing it. After the creeping plants disappeared, rice began to ripen in open spaces. This rice was free of dust and husks, with gleaming, pure grains. Wherever they harvested rice for their evening meal, it would sprout and ripen again by morning. And wherever they harvested it for breakfast in the morning, it would ripen again by evening. These beings began to eat this rice, and this lasted for a very long time. As they continued to live and feed in this way, their bodies became coarser, and the differences in their appearance became even more pronounced. Women developed distinctive feminine traits, and men developed masculine traits. Then the women began to closely observe the men, and the men began to closely observe the women. As they observed one another up close, lust arose within them, and they burned with desire. They began to give in to their passions. Other beings who saw them engaging in such acts would throw dirt, ashes, or dung at them, shouting, "Perish, fools! Perish, fools! How can one being do this with another?" Even today, in some regions, when a bride is taken out, some people throw dirt at her, others ashes, and others dung, not realizing they are repeating an ancient ritual. What was considered immoral in those days is now considered good. In those times, beings who gave into passions were not allowed into villages or towns for 1 or 2 months. Because they were condemned for their immorality, they were forced to begin building homes to conceal their acts. Counter records already indicate that the acts were referred to as allowing people to live closer to nature. Then it happened that one of the beings, prone to laziness, thought, "Why should I bother gathering rice in the evening for dinner and in the morning for breakfast? Why not gather it all at once for both meals?" One day, they did just that. Then another being came and said, "Friend, let's go gather rice." "No need, my friend. I've gathered enough for dinner and breakfast." Then, following this example, another gathered enough rice for 2 days, saying, "This should be enough." Then yet another being came and said, "Let's go gather rice." "No need, my friend. I've gathered enough for 2 days, 4 days, 8 days. From the time when these beings began eating harvested rice, the pure grains became covered in dust. Husks began to encase the grains, and where the rice had been harvested, it no longer regrew, leaving empty spaces. The rice began to grow only in specific areas. Then those beings gathered together, lamenting, "Immoral habits have become common among us. In the beginning, we were bodiless, fed on bliss, shone with our own light, moved through the air and were beautiful. We remained in this state for a very long time. Then, sooner or later, after a long time, appetizing earth appeared above the waters, possessing color, fragrance, and taste. We began to labor, breaking it into pieces, and enjoyed it. As we did this, our radiance disappeared. The moon and sun appeared, followed by stars and constellations, day and night, months and half-months, seasons and years. Continuing to eat the earth, enjoying it, we lived for a very long time. But as evil and immoral habits spread among us, the delicious earth disappeared. Next, mushrooms appeared, possessing color, fragrance, and taste. We began to eat them and, enjoying them, lived for a very long time. But when immoral and evil habits arose among us, the mushrooms disappeared. Then creeping plants appeared, possessing color, fragrance, and taste. We began to enjoy them, and feeding on them lived for a very long time. But as soon as evil and immoral habits prevailed among us, the plants also disappeared. Then, in open spaces, rice began to ripen, free from dust and husks, with pure, shining grains. In the places where we gathered it for dinner, it would regrow by morning, and where we gathered it for breakfast, it would regrow by evening. There were no empty spaces. It grew everywhere. Feeding on this rice, enjoying it, we lived for a very long time. But because evil and immoral habits arose among us, dust and husks began to cover the pure grains, and where they were harvested, they no longer regrew. Empty spaces appeared, and rice began to grow only in specific areas. Let us now divide the rice fields and set boundaries around them. And so they divided the fields and marked boundaries. Then one greedy being, guarding its own plot, took another plot that did not belong to it and began using it. The others seized it and said, "Dear friend, you have committed an immoral act by taking another's plot and using it. See to it that you do not act this way again." "I won't," it said. But it repeated the act a second and a third time. When it was caught again, it was reprimanded. Some beat it with their fists, others with clods of earth, and still others with sticks. And thus, theft, blame, and lying arose, and beings became acquainted with punishment. Then those beings gathered together, lamenting. Since evil deeds such as theft, blame, lying, and punishment have multiplied among us, let us choose someone who will show anger when needed, judge those who deserve judgment, and expel those who ought to be expelled. In return, we will give them a share of the rice." So they approached one among them who was the most respected, the most beautiful in appearance, the most agreeable, and the most capable, and said to him, "Dear friend, show your disapproval when someone needs to be judged fairly, and expel those who deserve expulsion. In return, we will give you a share of the rice." And he agreed. He began to do so, and they gave him a share of the rice. He took the rice and opened the box to see what was inside. Then it happened that some beings thought, "Evil deeds such as theft, blame, lying, punishment, and expulsion have arisen among us. Let us put an end to evil and immoral acts." And they did so. Ending evil and immoral acts became the meaning of the word Brahmin, the first title given to those who acted in this way. They began building leaf huts in the forest and meditating in them. Having extinguished their fires, set aside their pestles and mortars, and taken food for breakfast in the morning and dinner in the evening, they would go to villages, towns, or cities to seek alms. Having obtained food, they would return to their huts to meditate. However, some of these beings, unable to meditate in leaf huts, settled on the outskirts of cities and villages and began composing books. When people saw this, they said, "They, being unable to meditate in forest dwellings, have come to settle on the outskirts of villages and cities and write books. But they do not know how to meditate." Those who do not meditate is the meaning of the word Ajayaka, which became the third title for such people. At that time, those bearing this title were considered inferior, but in our day, they are regarded as superior. This is the origin of the Brahmin caste, according to the ancient titles that were assigned to them. They originated from the same beings as us, living alongside them, indistinguishable from them. This was established fairly and in accordance with the law, not against it. For the law is what is best for people, in this life and the next. And a person who led an unworthy life in body, speech, and thought, and who held wrong views, due to their wrong views and actions, after the dissolution of their body at death, will be reborn in a state of suffering, with an unfortunate fate, cast down into misery. Similarly, a person who led a worthy life in body, speech, and thought, and who held right views due to their right views and actions, when their body dissolves at death, will be reborn with a good destiny in a happy, radiant world. Thanks for watching. Siddhartha Gautama left his home at the age of 29 and began an ascetic life, and after 6 years of searching, he became the Buddha. But what ascetic practices did he perform during these 6 years, and what religious movements and sects did he follow? This is explained in great detail in the sutra called Mahathasinada Sutta. We present to you an abridged version of that sutra. Thus have I heard. Once the Blessed One was living near Vesali, in the grove to the west of the city. At that time, Sunakkhata, the son of the Lichavis, had recently abandoned this Dhamma and discipline. Addressing a gathering of Vesali citizens, he proclaimed, "The ascetic Gautama possesses no superhuman states, no distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. The ascetic Gautama teaches a Dhamma that is merely the product of his own reflection, following his own reasoning as it occurs to him. However, when he teaches this Dhamma to someone, it leads the one who practices it to the complete destruction of suffering." One morning, the Venerable Sariputta dressed, took his bowl and outer robe, and went to Vesali for alms. While there, he heard Sunakkhata making this claim before the Vesali citizens. After collecting alms, returning from his rounds, and finishing his meal, Sariputta went to the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down, and recounted what Sunakkhata had said. The Blessed One replied, Sariputta, that misguided man Sunakata speaks out of malice. Seeking to discredit the Tathagata, he unintentionally praises him. For it is indeed praise of the Tathagata to say, when he teaches someone the Dhamma, it leads the practitioner to the complete destruction of suffering. Sariputta, that misguided man Sunakata will never be able to make a statement in accordance with the Dhamma about me. This Blessed One is accomplished, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and conduct, sublime, knower of the worlds, unsurpassed leader of those to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, awakened, blessed, nor will he be able to truthfully claim in accordance with the Dhamma. This Blessed One possesses various kinds of supernormal powers. Being one, he becomes many, affecting the body such that he reaches even the Brahma world. Nor will he be able to say truthfully, through the divine ear element, purified and surpassing the human, the Blessed One hears both kinds of sounds, divine and human, far and near. Nor will he be able to claim truthfully, this Blessed One knows the minds of other beings, of other individuals, directing his own mind towards them, knowing an unliberated mind as unliberated. Sariputta, the Tathagata, possesses the powers of a Tathagata. With these powers, he takes the role of the leader of the herd, roars his lion's roar in the assemblies, and turns the wheel of Brahma. The Tathagata understands as it truly is what is possible as possible, and what is impossible as impossible. The Tathagata comprehends the outcomes of undertaken actions in terms of their possibilities and causes. This is also the strength of the Tathagata. The Tathagata discerns, as it truly is, the disposition of the qualities of other beings and individuals. This too is a strength of the Tathagata. Vukotuasta, the Tathagata understands the defilement, purification, and emergence leading to higher states concerning meditative absorptions, liberations, concentrations, and attainments. This too is a strength of the Tathagata. The Tathagata recalls his manifold past lives. This too is a strength of the Tathagata. Through the divine eye, purified and surpassing the human, the Tathagata sees the passing away and rebirth of beings. This too is a strength of the Tathagata. Through the destruction of the taints, the Tathagata here and now enters and abides in the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, having realized these states for himself with direct knowledge. Sariputta, when I know and see thus, if someone says of me, the ascetic Gautama has no superhuman states, no distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones, and if they do not abandon this claim, this state of mind, this view, then they will, as if drawn by force, fall into hell. Just as a monk endowed with virtue, concentration, and wisdom might attain ultimate knowledge here and now, in the same way, regarding Sunakata, I say that if he does not abandon this claim, this state of mind, this view, then, as if drawn by force, he will fall into hell. Sariputta, I remember living a holy life endowed with 4 factors. I was an ascetic, a supreme ascetic. I was severe in my asceticism, exceedingly severe. I was meticulous, exceedingly meticulous. I practiced seclusion, profound seclusion. My asceticism, Sariputta, was such that I walked naked, rejecting conventions. I licked my hands, did not go when called, and did not stay when asked. I refused food brought to me or prepared specifically for me, and I did not accept invitations to meals. I did not take anything from a pot, a bowl, over a threshold, through a stick, or through a pestle. I did not accept anything from 2 people eating together, from a pregnant woman and a nursing woman, or a woman among men. I did not take food from a place where it was announced as a giveaway, where a dog sat, or where flies hovered. I did not accept fish or meat. I refrained from consuming alcohol, wine, or fermented beverages. I restricted myself to alms from one house and one small portion of food, or 2 houses and 2 small portions, up to 7 houses and 7 small portions. I ate only 1 bowl of food a day, 2 up to 7 bowls of food a day. I consumed food only once a day, once every 2 days, up to once every 7 days, and even up to 2 weeks. I adhered to the practice of eating at established intervals. I lived on green vegetables, millet, wild rice, scraps of skin, moss, rice bran, rice froth, sesame flour, grass, or cow dung. I subsisted on forest roots and fruits, or fallen fruits. I wore clothing made of hemp, canvas, shrouds, discarded rags, tree bark, antelope hides, scraps of antelope hides, kusa grass, bark-based materials, or materials made from wood shavings. I wore cloaks made of hair from heads, animal wool, or owl feathers. I plucked out my hair and beard, practicing self-inflicted hair removal. I stood constantly, rejecting seating. I sat constantly, embracing my knees with my hands. I used a bed of spikes and rested on such a bed. I bathed in water 3 times a day, including at night. In these numerous ways, I practiced self-mortification and the killing of the body. Such was my asceticism. Such was my severity in asceticism, Sariputta, that like a tenduka tree whose bark peels off over time, the dust and dirt accumulated on my body over the years fell away. Never did the thought arise in me, what if I wipe off this dust and dirt with my hand, or let someone else wipe it off? Such a thought never occurred to me. Such was my severity. Such was my meticulousness, Sariputta, that I was always mindful when stepping forward or backward. I was full of compassion, even for a drop of water, thinking, may I not harm the tiny creatures in the cracks of the ground. Such was my meticulousness. Such was my seclusion, Sariputta, that I would retreat into a forest and live there. If I saw a shepherd, a cowherd, someone gathering grass or wood, or a forester, I would move from grove to grove, thicket to thicket, ravine to ravine, hill to hill. And why? To avoid seeing them or being seen by them, like a deer raised in the forest who, upon seeing people, moves from grove to grove, thicket to thicket, ravine to ravine, hill to hill. So did I, upon seeing, move hill to hill. Such was my seclusion. I crawled on all fours in cattle pens, and when the cattle left and the herder departed, I fed on the dung of young calves. When I had my own excrement and urine, I fed on them. Such was my practice of consuming impurities. I went to fearsome groves and dwelled there, groves so terrifying that the hair of anyone unfree from craving would stand on end. During those cold winter nights of 8 days of snowfall, I stayed on open ground at night and in a grove during the day. During the last month of the hot season, I stayed on open ground during the day and in a grove at night. And there this verse came to me, unheard before. Frozen by night, scorched by day. Secluded in fearsome groves, unclothed, not sitting by the fire, the sage continues on his quest. I made my bed in cemeteries, using the bones of the dead as a pillow. Herd boys would approach me, spit on me, urinate on me, throw dirt at me, and poke sticks into my ears. And yet, I do not recall ever giving rise to an unwholesome mind of hatred toward them. Such was my equanimity. Sariputta, You might think that the cola fruit was larger at that time, but you should not think so. At that time, the cola fruit was nearly the same size as it is now. Because I subsisted on only one cola fruit a day, my body became extremely emaciated. From eating so little, the joints of my body became like the segmented joints of a vine or bamboo stem. My buttocks became like a camel's hoof. My spine protruded like beads on a string. My ribs jutted out and looked as gaunt as the beams of an old roofless barn. The gleam in my eyes sank deep into their sockets, like water in a deep well. The skin on my head shriveled and dried like a green, bitter gourd shrivels in the wind and sun. The skin of my stomach clung to my spine, so much so that if I wanted to touch the skin of my stomach, I would grasp the skin of my stomach. From eating so little, when I needed to defecate or urinate, I fell to the ground face down. And when I tried to relieve my body by rubbing my limbs, the decayed roots of my hair fell away as I rubbed. Sariputta, there are some priests and ascetics whose doctrine and view are as follows. Purification comes through food. They say, we will live on beans, and they eat beans. We will live on sesame seeds, and they eat sesame seeds. We will live on rice, and they eat rice. I remember eating 1 grain of rice a day. X amajiskasit. I remember eating 1 grain of rice a day. Sariputta, you might think that the grain of rice was larger at that time, but you should not think so. At that time, a grain of rice was nearly the same size as it is now. Because I subsisted on only 1 grain of rice a day, my body became extremely emaciated. Yet Sariputta, through such behavior, such practice, and such extreme austerities, I did not attain any superhuman states, any distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. And why? Because I did not achieve that noble wisdom which, when attained, is noble and liberating, and which leads the practitioner to the complete destruction of suffering. Sariputta, there are some priests and ascetics whose doctrine and view are as follows. Purification comes through the cycle of rebirths. Yet it is not easy to find a realm in the cycle of rebirths through which I have not already passed during this long wandering, except for the pure abodes. If I had passed through the pure abodes as a deity, I would never have returned to this world. There are some priests and ascetics whose doctrine and view are as follows. Purification comes through sacrifice. Yet it is not easy to find a type of sacrifice that I have not performed during this long wandering, whether as a consecrated noble king or as a wealthy Brahmin. There are some priests and ascetics whose doctrine and view are as follows. Purification comes through fire worship. Yet it is not easy to find a type of fire that I have not worshipped during this long wandering, whether as a consecrated noble king or as a wealthy Brahmin. There are some priests and ascetics whose doctrine and view are as follows. While this venerable one is still young, black-haired, blessed with youth in the prime of life, he is perfect in clear wisdom. But when this venerable one is old, aged, burdened with years, having lived long, with his days nearly at an end, and 80, 90, or 100 years old, then his clarity of wisdom is lost. But one should not think so. Now I am old, aged, burdened with years, having lived long, with my days nearly at an end, in my 80th year. Imagine, Sariputta, if I had 4 disciples, perfect in mindfulness, possessing excellent memory, retention, and clarity of wisdom, each with a lifespan of 100 years. Just as a skilled archer, trained, practiced, and tested, could easily shoot a light arrow through the shadow of a palm tree. Imagine that they were so perfect in mindfulness, possessing excellent memory, retention, and clarity of wisdom. And imagine if they continuously asked me questions about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and when asked, I answered them, and they memorized each of my answers without asking secondary questions or pausing, except to eat, drink, consume food, savor its taste, urinate, defecate, or rest to dispel sleepiness and fatigue. Even then, the Tathagata's exposition of the Dhamma, his explanation of the factors of the Dhamma, and his answers to questions would not come to an end, while those 4 disciples with a lifespan of 100 years would have already passed away after those 100 years. Sariputta, even if I were to be carried on a bed, there would still be no change in the Tathagata's clarity of wisdom. If anyone speaking truthfully were to say of anyone, a being free from delusion has appeared in the world for the welfare and happiness of many, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, welfare, and happiness of gods and humans, it is indeed about me that such a person could truthfully say this. At that time, the Venerable Nagasamala was standing behind the Blessed One, fanning him. Then he said to the Blessed One, "Marvelous, Venerable Sir, wonderful, Venerable Sir." While listening to this discourse on the Dhamma, my body hair stood on end. Venerable Sir, what is the name of this discourse on the Dhamma? And in that case, Nagasamala, you may remember this discourse on the Dhamma as the hair-raising discourse. Thus, the Blessed One said. The Venerable Nagasamala was satisfied and delighted with the Blessed One's words. Thus I have heard. Once, the Blessed One was dwelling in Savatthi, in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There, the Blessed One addressed the monks. "Monks, Venerable Sir," they replied. The Blessed One said, "Monks, imagine 2 houses with doors, and a person with good eyesight standing between them could see people entering and leaving, moving back and forth. In the same way, with the divine eye, purified and surpassing the human, I see beings dying and being reborn, lowly and exalted, beautiful and unfortunate. I understand how beings pass to other realms according to their actions. These worthy beings, who conducted themselves well in body, speech, and mind, who did not insult the noble ones, who upheld right views and acted under the influence of right views, upon the dissolution of the body, after death, were reborn in a happy destination, even in a heavenly world. Or, these worthy beings, who conducted themselves well in body, speech, and mind, who did not insult the noble ones, who upheld right views and acted under the influence of right views, upon the dissolution of the body, after death, were reborn among humans. But these beings, who behaved poorly in body, speech, and mind, who insulted the noble ones, who upheld wrong views and acted under the influence of wrong views, upon the dissolution of the body, after death, were reborn in the realm of ghosts, or in the animal realm. Or, these beings, who behaved poorly in body, speech, and mind, were reborn in a state of deprivation, in a bad destination, in perdition, even in hell. The hell wardens seize such a being by the arms and bring them to King Yama, saying, "Your Majesty, this person mistreated their mother, mistreated their father, mistreated ascetics, mistreated priests. They showed no respect for the elders of their clan. Let your Majesty assign them punishment." Then King Yama questions, interrogates, and cross-examines them about the heavenly messengers. "Good person, did you not see the heavenly messenger who appeared in the world?" They reply, "I did not, Venerable One." Then King Yama says, "Good person, did you never see in the world a baby lying on its back, fouled in its own excrement and urine?" The person replies, "I did, Venerable One." Then King Yama says, "Good person, did it never occur to you, as a mature and intelligent person, I too am subject to birth. I am not exempt from birth. Surely it would be better for me to do good by body, speech, and mind?" They reply, "I could not, Venerable One. I was heedless." King Yama continues, "Good person, did you never see an old man or woman, 80, 90, 100 years old, bent like a bow, doubled over, walking with a staff, trembling, feeble, having lost their youth, with broken teeth, gray and thinning hair, wrinkled, with blotched limbs?" The person replies, "I did, Venerable One." King Yama says, "Good person, did it never occur to you, as a mature and intelligent person, I too am subject to aging. I am not exempt from aging. Surely it would be better for me to do good by body, speech, and mind?" They reply, "I could not, Venerable One. I was heedless." King Yama continues, "Good person, did you never see a man or woman afflicted by illness, lying in their own excrement and urine, lifted by some and laid down by others?" The person replies, "I did, Venerable One." King Yama says, "Good person, did it never occur to you, as a mature and intelligent person, I too am subject to illness. I am not exempt from illness. Surely it would be better for me to do good by body, speech, and mind?" They reply, "I could not, Venerable One. I was heedless." King Yama continues, "Good person, did you never see a person being punished by kings in various ways for their crimes? Beaten with whips, canes, or clubs, having their hands or feet cut off, being subjected to torment, or executed?" The person replies, "I did, Venerable One." King Yama says, "Good person, did it never occur to you, as a mature and intelligent person, evil deeds bring suffering even in this life? How much more so in the life to come? Surely it would be better for me to do good by body, speech, and mind?" They reply, "I could not, Venerable One. I was heedless." King Yama concludes, "Good person, because of your heedlessness, you failed to do good by body, speech, and mind. Surely you will now face the results of your heedlessness. This evil deed was not done by your mother, father, brother, sister, friends, relatives, priests, ascetics, or deities. This evil deed was done by you, and you alone will experience its results. The hell wardens torment them with five-fold impalement, driving a red-hot iron stake through their hands, feet, and chest. They experience sharp, excruciating pain, but do not die until their evil deeds have exhausted their results. Then the wardens cast them into the great hell. Monk, this is how beings suffer in the great hell. It has 4 corners. It is built with 4 doors, one on each side. It is sealed with iron everywhere and covered above with an iron roof. Its floor is made of iron, heated until red hot, 100 leagues in length. It encompasses all within it. Flames erupting from the eastern wall of the great hell strike its western wall. Flames erupting from its western wall strike its eastern wall. Then, picking up a small stone the size of his palm, the Blessed One addressed the monks. "What do you think, monks? What is greater? This small stone the size of my palm, which I have taken, or the Himalayas, the king of mountains? Venerable sir, the small stone the size of your palm, which the Blessed One has taken, Compared to the Himalayas, the king of mountains is not even worth considering, does not withstand any comparison, and cannot be measured against even a fraction of the Himalayas. In the same way, monks, the pain and sorrow a person might experience from being struck by 300 spears, compared to the suffering in hell, is not even worth considering, does not withstand any comparison, and cannot be measured against even a fraction of the suffering in hell. At some point, monks, after a long period, it happens that the eastern door of the great hell opens. He runs towards it with quick steps. As he does so, his outer skin burns, his inner skin burns, his flesh burns, his sinews burn, and his bones begin to smolder. And this happens every time he lifts a foot. When he finally reaches the door, it slams shut. And there he experiences painful, tormenting, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die until that bad deed has exhausted its result. At some point, monks, after a long period, it happens again. The eastern door of the great hell opens. He runs towards it with quick steps. As he does so, his outer skin burns, his inner skin burns, his flesh burns, his sinews burn, and his bones begin to smolder. And this happens every time he lifts a foot. When he finally reaches the door, it slams shut. And there he experiences painful, tormenting, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die until that bad deed has exhausted its result. Immediately after the hell of excrement comes the endless hell of burning coals. He falls into it. Immediately after the hell of burning coals comes the endless forest of Simbali trees, each a league tall, bristling with spikes, 16 fingers wide, burning, blazing, and glowing. He is forced to climb up and down these trees. There he experiences painful, tormenting, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die until that bad deed has exhausted its result. Immediately after the forest of Simbali trees comes the endless forest of sharp leaf trees. He enters it. The wind-blown leaves cut his hands, cut his legs, cut his hands and legs. They cut his ears, cut his nose, cut his ears and nose. There he experiences painful, tormenting, piercing feelings, yet he does not die until that bad deed has exhausted its result. Immediately after the forest of sharp-leaved trees comes the great river with caustic waters. He falls into it. There he is tossed downstream, upstream, downstream, and upstream. There he experiences painful, tormenting, piercing feelings, yet he does not die until that bad deed has exhausted its result. Then the guards of hell pull him out with a hook, set him on the ground, and ask him, "Venerable one, what do you desire?" He replies, "I am hungry, sirs." The guards of hell then open his mouth with red-hot iron tongs, burning, blazing, and glowing, and place a red-hot copper ball, burning, blazing, and glowing, into his mouth. It burns his lips, burns his mouth, burns his throat, burns his stomach, and falls out below along with his intestines. There he experiences painful, tormenting, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die until that bad deed has exhausted its result. Then the guards of hell cast him back into the great hell. And it came to pass that King Yama thought, "Those people in the world who commit bad, unwholesome deeds truly endure all these numerous forms of torment. Oh, if only I could be reborn into the human state, and the Tathagata, the perfect one, fully awakened, would appear in the world. Then I could serve that blessed one, and that blessed one could teach me the Dhamma, so that I could understand the Dhamma of the blessed one. Monks, I tell you this not as something I have heard from another priest or ascetic. I tell you this because I myself have truly known, seen, and discovered it." Thus spoke the Blessed One, and when the Supreme One had spoken, the teacher added further, "Heavenly messengers warn them, yet many remain heedless. Long will those people grieve when they fall into the lower worlds. But when the good are warned in this life by messengers from the heavens, they live without heedlessness, practicing the noble Dhamma well. Practicing the noble Dhamma well. With fear they see clinging, for it brings birth and death, and without clinging they are liberated, for they have destroyed birth and death. They are blissful, for they are saved, attaining nibbana here and now. Overcoming all hatred and fear, they are freed from all suffering." Thanks for watching. The Buddha initially did not want to accept women into the monastic community for several reasons that reflected the cultural and social norms of the time. He feared that the cohabitation of monks and nuns might lead to difficulties in discipline and undermine the spiritual purity and focus of the monks. However, he changed his mind later due to the persistence of his stepmother, Mahapadipati Gautami, and the support of his disciple Ananda. The Buddha first ordained women as nuns 5 years after achieving enlightenment and ordaining the first men as monks. The Buddha clearly stated that the potential for enlightenment is not gender-based. It exists due to human birth, and women are seen as human beings with the same spiritual potential as men. In light of this view of their potential, the Buddha allowed women who sincerely wished to dedicate themselves to his teachings to become nuns. He spent much time teaching both nuns and laywomen without hiding any teachings from them because of their gender. In ancient India, there were strict limitations on the role of women in society. Women were considered dependent on men and rarely participated in spiritual practice on equal terms with men. The Buddha was likely aware that admitting women into the Sangha would invite criticism and misunderstandings. According to some texts from the Tripitaka, the Buddha predicted that accepting women into the Sangha could shorten the lifespan of the teachings by 500 years. However, this statement is disputed among scholars and Buddhists. There is a sutta from the Tripitaka called Gautami, which describes the Buddha's thoughts on this issue. One day, the Blessed One was in the land of the Sakyas in Kapilavatthu at the Banyan Grove. Then, his aunt and stepmother, Mahapajapati Gautami, approached the Blessed One, bowed to him, stood to the side, and said, "Lord, it would be good if women could be given permission to leave the household life for the homeless life in Dhamma and Vinaya, as proclaimed by the Tathagata." The Blessed One replied, "Enough, Gautami. Do not ask for permission for women to leave the household life for the homeless life." At that, Gautami, thinking, "The Blessed One does not grant permission for women to leave the household life for the homeless life," became distressed and sorrowful, her face full of tears, and began weeping. She then bowed to the Blessed One and left, walking around him to his right side. After staying in Kapilavatthu for as long as he deemed necessary, the Blessed One traveled to Vesali. In time, he arrived in Vesali and stayed in the hall with a pointed roof in the great forest. Then, Gautami cut her hair, put on yellow robes, and, together with a group of women from the Sakya clan, went to Vesali. There, with swollen feet and body covered in dust, distressed and sorrowful, with a face full of tears, she stood at the entrance. The Venerable Ananda saw her standing there in such a state and addressed her, "Gautami, why are you standing at the entrance?" "It is because, Lord Ananda, the Blessed One does not grant permission for women to leave the household life for the homeless life." Well, Gautami, wait here, and I will ask the Blessed One for permission for women to leave the household life for the homeless life. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, bowed to him, sat down beside him, and said, "Teacher, Gautami is standing at the entrance with swollen feet and a body covered in dust, distressed and sorrowful, with a face full of tears, weeping because the Blessed One does not grant permission for women to leave the household life for the homeless life. Teacher, it would be good if women could be given permission to leave the household life for the homeless life." "Enough, Ananda, do not ask for permission for women to leave the household life for the homeless life." At that, a thought arose in the Venerable Ananda. The Blessed One does not grant permission for women to leave the household life for the homeless life. What if I ask the Blessed One in some other way? Then the Venerable Ananda addressed the Blessed One. "Teacher, if a woman were to leave the household life for the homeless life, would it be possible for her to realize the fruit of stream entry, the fruit of once returning, the fruit of non-returning, the fruit of arahantship?" "It would be possible, Ananda. Teacher, Gautami has been very helpful to the Blessed One. She was his maternal aunt, his nurse, and his stepmother who nursed him after his mother passed away." "Would it be good if women could be given permission to leave the household life for the homeless life? If Ananda, Gautami, agrees to these 8 principles of respect, then her agreement shall be her full ordination as a nun. A nun, ordained for 100 years, must bow to a monk who is ordained on the same day. She must stand before him, greet him respectfully, and behave courteously toward him. A nun must not start the rainy season retreat where there are no monks. Every half month, a nun must ask the Sangha of monks about 2 matters: the day for the Uposatha, and when any monk will come to give teachings to the nuns. After the end of the rainy season, a nun must request permission from both Sanghas regarding 3 matters: anything she has seen, heard, or suspected. A nun who has committed a serious offense must undergo punishment from both Sanghas for half a month. Postulant who has completed a 2-year training in 6 principles must request permission for higher ordination from both Sanghas. A nun must never insult or scold a monk. From this moment on, Ananda, nuns are forbidden to admonish monks, but monks are not forbidden to admonish nuns. If, Ananda, Gautami agrees to these 8 principles of respect, then her agreement shall be her full ordination as a nun." Then the Venerable Ananda, having learned these 8 principles of respect from the Blessed One, went to Gautami and said to her, "If, Gautami, you agree to accept these 8 principles of respect as those that should not be violated throughout the life of a nun, then your agreement shall be your full ordination." Gautami replied, "Lord Ananda, if a woman or a man, young, youthful, adorned with jewelry, with a washed head, were to receive a garland of blue lotuses, jasmine flowers, or lilies, they would accept it with both hands and place it on their head. Similarly, I accept these 8 principles of respect as those that should not be violated throughout the life of a nun." Then the Venerable Ananda went to the Blessed One, bowed to him, sat down beside him, and said, "Teacher, Mahapajapati Gautami has agreed to accept the 8 principles of respect as those that should not be violated throughout the life of a nun." The Blessed One said, "Ananda, if women had not been given permission to leave the household life for the homeless life, the holy life would have lasted for a long time. The noble Dhamma would have endured for 1,000 years without distortion. But, Ananda, since women have left the household life for the homeless life, the holy life will not last long. The noble Dhamma will last only 500 years. Just as Ananda, wandering robbers easily attack families with many women and few men. In any Dhamma and Vinaya where women are allowed to leave the household life for the homeless life, the holy life will not last long. Just as Ananda, a field with ripening mountain rice, suffers from a blight and does not last long, similarly in any Dhamma and Vinaya where women are allowed to leave the household life for the homeless life, the holy life will not last long. Just as Ananda, a field of ripening sugarcane, suffers from a rust disease and does not last long, so too in any Dhamma and Vinaya, where women are allowed to leave the household life for the homeless life, the holy life will not last long. Just as Ananda, a person would build a dam around a large reservoir as a precaution to prevent the water from overflowing, so too as a precaution, I have prescribed for nuns to observe the 8 principles of respect as those that should not be violated throughout the life of a nun.